name is Rose Chiachi, and I'm the Executive Director of the Pike County Public Library. I'm here today to tell you how to sign up for a library card. If you're a Pike County resident, it's really easy. You just stop by with proof of residency and a photo ID, and we'll get you all signed up. If you're not a resident, it's also really easy. You can just stop by with a photo ID, and for $35, you'll have full access to all of the library resources. Unfortunately, right now, our buildings aren't open to the public, but you can still sign up for a library card on our website, www.pcpl.org. Whether you're doing research for a project or looking for some inspiration, we can absolutely help you find what you're looking for. A really cool thing about libraries is that if we don't have the item that you're looking for, we can find it for you, no problem. We have a huge network of libraries in Pennsylvania and the entire country that we can borrow from on your behalf. Please check out our website, www.pcpl.org, for all of the virtual opportunities we're offering right now, or give us a call with any questions. Finally, I want to thank everyone from Peters Valley for bringing these great programs to our community and including the library. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the program.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Kristen Muller, Director of Peters Valley School of Craft. And this program tonight is brought to you by the Greater Pike County Community Foundation that has, through the Richard L. Snyder Fund, funds these library lectures so we can bring artists from all over the country and all over the world to Pike County and to our Peters Valley network. We're just so glad that you're here tonight to join us. I want to welcome our guest artist, Joan Takayama-Ogawa. She's a ceramist and professor at Otis School of Art and Design in California. Born in Pasadena as a third generation or sansei Japanese American, Ms. Takayama-Ogawa received her Master of Arts from Stanford Graduate School of Education in 1979. She began her career as a faculty and academic dean at the Crossroads School in Santa Monica. The following summer, she decided to take a ceramics class and soon uncovered her family's connection to the art form dating back to the 15th century. Her newly discovered love of creating clay art soon became an obsession. I know all about that, Joan. And she left her middle school teaching position to pursue a career in the ceramic arts at the Otis School of Art and Design. Ms. Takayama-Ogawa is an internationally renowned artist who uses ancient Japanese ceramic forms as a guide in creating contemporary pieces with decorating and imagery drawn from an American lifestyle. Recently, she's begun to explore contemporary themes such as climate change. She also pushes the boundaries of ceramics by integrating clay with digital and 3D printing technologies. Ms. Takayama-Ogawa currently serves as a professor in ceramics, product design, English and public speaking at the Otis School of Art and Design. She has served as a Pasadena Design Commissioner, a member of the Board of Directors of the American Museum of Ceramic Arts. Her ceramics are included in the permanent collections of numerous museums throughout the world, including the Smithsonian Institution, DeYoung Museum of Fine Arts, World Ceramic Exposition Foundation, Los Angeles County Museum of Art, Oakland Museum of California, Long Beach Museum of Art, and American Museum of Ceramic Art. Please join us tonight. Welcome, Joan Takayama-Ogawa, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. And
okay, and while you do that, I'll let everyone know that if you have got questions at the bottom of the Zoom on the right-hand side, there's a little spot that says Q&A. Please put your questions in there. And when we're done, when Joan is done, I will ask them. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Peters Valley, for inviting me. And here I am Zooming from Pasadena, California. Oh dear. Well, it's not advancing. Okay, let's try again. Oh dear. Okay, sorry. I'm not sure why this isn't advanced. Oh, here we go. All right, well, I always like to start off with thank you. Thank you, Kristen, Rachel, Jennifer, and Bruce over at Peters Valley. I would like to thank the Craft in America Center, the Department of Cultural Affairs, and many, many, many galleries, including right now, Themes and Projects Gallery in San Francisco, Farron Gallery, Garth Clark Gallery, Dorothy Weiss Gallery, and the American Hand, all of which are no longer actually active except for Farron Contemporary. Otis College of Art and Design, always, and my parents, as well as all the students who've had to listen to me fret about climate change. My story begins in Tokoname, Japan, as Kristen said, in the 15th century when my family members were captured as Korean slaves and brought as Korean slave potters and brought to Tokoname and became part of what is now considered one of the ancient kilns of Japan. When you go to Tokoname, which is very close to Nagoya, which is between Tokyo and Osaka or Kyoto, you will see paved retaining walls, even of broken pots. And on your right are good examples of my family's work for a very long time. Our family arrived in 1906, establishing what is called Meiji Laundry in Pasadena. The laundry continued until 1941 when our family was relocated. Here's my mom, dad, and me on the left. My father was a graduate of the USC School of Architecture prior to World War II, which would be a very important, significant achievement because, of course, he would be drafted into the US Army and placed in military intelligence where he served in Asia. My mother was relocated to Poston Relocation Camp during World War II and worked at the Huntington Hospital, which is one of the big trauma units of the San Gabriel Valley here in Los Angeles. And of course, Pasadena is known for the Rose Parade. For those of you who might be in college or not, thinking about college, I really do want to put a whole idea out there that is so important to receive a college education. I actually regretted it for many years until I got a little older. I did my undergraduate at UCLA and majored in geography and East Asian studies. In 1973 is when I first learned about greenhouse gas emissions, which I'll go over a little bit today. I spent my junior year abroad in Japan at International Christian University, which is it is the UC or University of California campus abroad where all 9 universities send students. I did my graduate work, as Kristen said, at UCLA, at Stanford University in the education department, where then I was recruited to return to the Santa Monica area in Los Angeles and was a faculty member and a dean of the middle school at Crossroads School. And I decided to make coffee mugs for the entire middle school faculty and took classes at Otis College of Art and Design. I have yet to make those coffee mugs, but I have stayed at Otis teaching English and all kinds of courses at Otis, and now head of the ceramics program at Otis for the past 34 years. So my teapots oftentimes started to evolve into overconsumption, ideas of opulence, of vanishing species, and particularly I started focusing on environmental commentary. This is a show that is up currently that at Craft in America Center is sponsoring. It's called LA Made. It is in LAX Airport, Los Angeles Airport in the Southwest Terminal. My piece is the piece over here about a coral reef, bleached coral reef chandelier using aircraft cable to suspend it. Currently up in the, although the Craft in America Center has been closed during the pandemic, they will open this weekend as Los Angeles reopens quietly. These, we place these ceramic totems to be intentionally figurative, and they are lit by solar panels here, as you can see over here on your left. And at night, they illuminate using LED lights. Bill Gates' book just came out in February, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. I strongly, strongly recommend that you pick up a copy. It is readable, it is understandable, and after you read it, you realize we must get to zero emissions. So this is straight from Bill Gates's new book. Every year, the world adds 51 billion tons of greenhouse emissions to the atmosphere. Zero is what we need to stop global warming and avoid climate disaster. We must stop adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So what are greenhouse gases? Greenhouse gases trap heat in the atmosphere. So imagine these thick blankets of greenhouse gases over the Earth's And as the heat rises from the earth, these greenhouse gases trap the heat in our atmosphere. Once emitted, these greenhouse gases stick around for 10,000 years. That is why the world keeps getting hotter and colder, and getting to zero means the planet will remain hot, but not continue hotter. So if we can, so greenhouses are actually a misnomer in many ways, but if you think of your car on a hot summer day with all the windows up and you return to your car and it's hotter inside your car than it is outside, well, think of that roof of your car as greenhouse gases that hold the heat in and it cannot escape. So what fossil fuels are some of the major sources of greenhouse gases. However, there are so many other forms, other things that are contributing to this very serious problem of 51 billion tons a year. Coal for sure as an energy source, oil and our dependence on it, and natural gas. And that could be our stoves, but it could also be our gas kilns. And so I'd like to talk about that a little bit today. We must capture carbon with innovative devices. What can we do? Let science lead the way. Flying and driving less is not enough. We have not lowered our greenhouse gas emissions significantly, even during the pandemic. We have a little, but not enough. Teleconferencing is not enough. In fact, zero carbon ways to produce energy could be looking at how we produce electricity, growing food at home, developing new seeds to feed the world's poor, plant-based diets, and some other good ideas. Clean energy, in order for it to work, must be profitable. By focusing clean energy on 4 major culprits, California, China, Walmart, and Amazon, we could make a significant difference as these 4 entities continue to percolate out and would affect actually the entire world. Biden's executive orders on his first days called for wind and solar energy along the East Coast. Elon Musk just recently announced that he was going to have a $1 million carbon trapping prize, and Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation are dedicating many of their efforts in feeding the poor, but also to climate change, and both are related. And for us, ceramic innovations are necessary. So as early as 1992, when my husband and I and family, we were all out in Hawaii, and we go quite often, I started to notice that the coral reefs that we often frequented were starting to turn a little black. And not understanding in 1992 the reason for that, I did make my first dinnerware set called Plate Tectonics, Japanese American Dinnerware, where in the center I made a coral reef where I serve sushi, and with 6 bento boxes that break apart like plate tectonics do. And because we live in earthquake country on top of it, and on the gold areas, I would place fish or chicken. In the recessed areas, dipping sauce or marinated vegetables. So as a result, I knocked off the legs of our dining room table and mounted it to the wall, as you see on the right-hand side. And when I need to serve, I just take the bento boxes down and serve it on a table. Again, though, just first noticing problems of the coral reefs, not knowing why in 1992. Ocean ecology continues to be really important throughout my career. At first, I started making coral teapots, coral lidded containers, coral islands, sea urchin teapots, and then I started working on tipping point cups, where fossil fuels are hitting a tipping point. We are becoming overfished on the right-hand side with tipping point overfished. Fossil fuels and my interest in all of these environmental as well as all kinds of ideas of overconsumption. On your left, I'm talking more, continue to talk about the catalytic converters that allow us to drive further, however, to continue our dependence on fossil fuels. Down below, I have here the United States of America in black oil, outlined in black oil, for America's crude awakening. In the center is a piece that is over at the American Museum of Ceramic Art titled Sustained Beauty, again, trying to kind of abstract figures of our responsibility for sustainability. And in these holes right here, I write in gold some poetry. Over on your right, I have California's role. And here's California along its Gold Coast. And I have sushi with subprime lending. These are sinking banks here. Here's the TARP program with this egg sushi with a fly in there of decadence and overindulgence. Again, fossil fuels and subprime lending. We continue to overconsume, overeat, and one fly ruins a meal. Just imagine 3 flies. Wow, I'm having trouble advancing. How come? Oh dear. Okay. In 1993, it was the first really serious wildfire that we had in the Altadena, Pasadena area. In 1 hour, we lost over 100 homes in this area. This is the fire would just roar down these valleys and nailed all the houses against the mountains. This is the destruction below our house. The fire just went sweeping right by us and then went back up into the canyon. But this is about 4 blocks below our home. So just to give you an idea of how fast these things are and how random a California wildfire is, which we now host them or have them all year round. And I'm sure you hear about when our state is on fire. John McPhee's Los Angeles Against the Mountains, New Yorker magazine writer, wrote, "Nature's invoice is high, and how can we defy nature and expect to win?" Wow, I am having real trouble advancing this thing. Okay, oops. So maybe this is the way. So I continued with making United States platters, but again with sushi, telling the story of overconsumption. And over on your right, I continued to make food metaphors with more flies in clay. So in 2006, my husband, who is right here hiding in the background here, he has been an organic produce broker since 1973. He's really one of the early pioneers of organic produce. At the time, I would consider it a religion, and now, of course, it has evolved into a big business, agrobiz. But in 2006, he decided, and we decided, to remove the front lawn. And as you can see, the neighbors all have, nice front lawns. We removed the front lawn, created raised beds, and created a decomposed granite walkways to produce food in the front yard. And this was the idea that even though we could get unlimited amounts of organic produce, we wanted to also grow the food, because my husband, Stephen, figured out that the average piece of produce consumed in California traveled 1,165 miles, which is absolutely ridiculous when we have the right climate to grow an incredible vegetable basket. So here we open up our front yard to the entire neighborhood, and our neighbors are welcome to come and pick whatever they want. We have a packing area in the corner here where people can pack their groceries and make a salad for themselves. Biodiversity becomes a very important part of what we plant in the front yard, so that if we have bugs, because we are organic, if we have bugs attack one plant, then maybe they won't attack another plant in another bed. So we try to scatter the tomatoes around, scatter the squash around, again, in our front yard. Artichokes grow plentifully here in Southern California. We leave buckets all over the place, and our neighbors assist us with weeding. We also exchange produce among one another. So the city of Pasadena decided to, in this biodiversity garden, the city of Pasadena fined us for taking out our front lawn in 2006. We were way too early. We were breaking a code. I was a design commissioner at that time, so I went right down to City Hall and said, "Get rid of this. You're going to be sorry." And today, Pasadena pays residents $500 for removing their lawns. So in 2008, we decided, okay, we're going to have to remodel this. This kitchen was falling apart. So how do you do that with any kind of sustainability? We have bamboo cabinets, bamboo floors, and I made from recycled clay, I made the bamboo tile. By 2006, it's the first time I thought, okay, I got to get rid of plaster and paper and plastic. So I start thinking, well, maybe I should be functional potter. I'm not too good at it, and I would really call for the functional potters out there to get to work, and let's replace paper and plastic. A close-up of the bamboo clay tiles and garden window, which now I do for seedlings, but I also made these candelabra. But now I sprout seedlings in here for the gardens. More attempts towards function, thinking that the leaf was probably the first plate that in prehistoric time, you get a big plate, put your food on it and consume it. So I made leaf planters and leaf plates, leaf planters. I make all kinds of things around leaves. And of course, chalices and coffee and tea. I don't know, not too functional probably, but even stacking cups can be a vase. So at Otis Product Design, where I work as leading the ceramics program, we have run out of land in Los Angeles, and so many cemeteries are moving towards cremation urns. So we received a corporate sponsored project with the Hillside Cemetery, and sadly, at Laguna Clay, Joe Kilns was our mentor in working with us on plaster mold making and the entire production line, and he passed away during this project. And so his urn, this is an urn that was designed by Maxine Wong, a pretty famous now product designer, and Laguna Clay formulated all the glazes for Joe's resting place, final resting place, and I China painted and lustered it. In 2008, Valerie Wu, one of my students who lives in Guam, came home with all these chunks of bleached coral that she found on the beach. And I thought, oh my God, what have we done? And it is there that I started carrying this bleached coral and looking at it in my purse, in my pockets, in my apron. And I went from all this colorful work to making commentary about the bleached coral as a canary in the coal mine, indicating that we were our oceans were warming up and creating environmental disaster. The American Museum of Ceramic Art sponsored this climate change exhibition for me. We used LED batteries, LED lights with batteries, and because it is in a windowless exhibition hall, I used Costco puck lights, which are LED lights with batteries in them, and these puck lights are often used inside your closets or inside your kitchen, underneath your kitchen cabinets, and I use them to illuminate and give people the idea of a chandelier and how it would light up. In addition to that, these on your right are these little lamps that instead of burning a candle, these LED puck lights can be used outdoors and on your patio furniture. Continuing with this idea of lighting up totems, I also started making wall sconces for outdoor walls, to replace outdoor wall sconces with LEDs. And this was a commission that was developed through AMOCA for a home in Los Angeles. So we had to remove a very big tree that was seriously diseased and was actually threatening to uproot our home and our neighbors' homes as well. The root system was so huge. So we removed the tree, but with that, we created a real environmental problem. The water, when we have our flash floods in Los Angeles, would flow this way and flood our home. in it because the root system of this tree was holding the water back. But when we removed the tree, we had ourselves a problem. So Tom Poplin is the only landscaper, I went through 3 of them, who was willing to do this big experiment that we would grade the entire backyard this way to drain into this enormous hole. And then everything from all the water from the house would also drain. And here's the size of the drain, just to give you an idea. And then we would pour concrete, of all things, to get the water off of our property as fast as possible during flash floods. But then what are you going to do with all the water? So the water drains into now this area here, and then I will show you in a second, it will then go off into, hopefully, water receptacle tanks. However, here we have a Mondo Grass, which I thought was very pretty. However, it doesn't survive in over 100-degree heat, of which we have 90 days at least here in Pasadena, California. So Mondo Grass was a total failure. And doing the things that we start thinking about does come with some success and a tremendous amount of failure. So I built a tree using recycled lumber. This took 3 years to cure the lumber and to really get it ready to go. We built a tree. It is so strong, and you can see that it's overbuilt, that it is waiting for solar panels as we have more sophisticated battery storage. My idea would be to have the solar panels hooked up to the batteries, which then would light up take care of all of our electricity needs and hopefully fire electric kilns. So I am waiting for the battery storage technology to advance just a little bit more, but we're still ready to go. So here we go. The water is going to be traveling as fast as possible to the streets, because our streets up here are, during flash floods and during heavy rains, our streets are flood control channels. And so I said, okay, I'm going to buy this Costco shed, and I'm going to store water inside of it. This is another failure, because what I didn't think about is that I would have to pump the water up into this shed, which makes no sense whatsoever. And so therefore, all this water is still traveling to the street, and my tanks, which will probably be put in soon, and it's taken me a long time to figure this out. We'll have these tanks buried in the front yard, and then I can remove water and water the front yard garden. So now the Costco storage shed stores Amazon boxes. Using shade cloth from Lowe's Garden Center, I'm able to use the light colored shade cloth at 75%. This has cooled down the house tremendously, so I have built a tree. In other words, the tree has provided shade, and during the summer months, it cools off the entire half of the house. And when I put a thermometer, there's sometimes a 15-degree difference from the shade pavilion and no shade in the front yard. And so therefore, I do think that architectural solutions can lower the temperature and of course lower our energy consumption. In addition to that, I'm dangling LED lights down here, and then with aircraft cable, I am suspending these ceramic lampshades. And so you can see it right here, the aircraft cables supporting the ceramics, and an LED bulb being supported separately with no weight on the actual electrical line. Regardless of what happens at the end of the day, and tonight when I finish my classes at 11:30 or 11 o'clock at night, I do like to sit out here and have a quiet moment. And there's nothing better than a moment of tranquility. Themes and projects in 2018 in San Francisco. And this is a commercial gallery that took the risk of my global warming idea. So here is, I named all of the pieces after coral reefs that are compromised and bleaching. So here is Great Barrier Reef Palau. And again, this can go outdoors with LED lighting. The American Museum of Ceramic Art purchased for their collection this centerpiece that can illuminate a table for Madagascar coral reef. also triptychs, as this is actually a painting gallery, and so it seemed only appropriate to make a ceramic painting. Which I really wanted to do was to defy the usual rectilinear piece, rectilinear forms for paintings, and create my own organic versus geometric forms. Back to black coral in Kauai. What I saw in 1992 has become a reality, that instead of turning white, the coral in Kauai is turning black. They are thinking and speculating that it could be the use of suntan lotion that has been compromising that coral reef, along with warming oceans. Their branch coral is also compromised in the Hawaiian Islands, and so I painted a branch coral with some eyeballs looking at what have we done. Crying coral, again, the same idea of electrifying with LED lights to give you an idea of how this could be very dramatic in a inside the home or outside the home. And one of the things about clay is that I found that people can collect clay and place them in the restrooms, in their restrooms. They can place it in their kitchens. They can place it by their swimming pools. They can place it outdoors, indoors, and there's space for it, and certainly an opportunity to do so. More coral reefs that are compromised, and coral mobiles for air plants and succulents. Darkening coral. This is in a living room right now in a collector's home, and they turn it on and off with a remote. No electrical outlet. And so I would like to propose that we start to grow our own food, and that we can become more and more sustainable. And so when the pandemic broke out in March, on March 16th, 2020, Otis College of Art and Design closed, and our students went out into the world, and we had a food shortage that you wouldn't believe, because the grocery store aisles were empty, and I'm sure yours might have been as well. And so my students and I, through Zoom, started building our own victory gardens. And this is one student who took out the lawn in the backyard, even painted a wall, painted a mural to feed her family. One student, this is an apartment, using buckets to grow all kinds of food. This is, of course, Japanese vegetables, shiso, which is a basil, Japanese mustard, carrots, collard greens, oregano for my house. And we started exchanging and leaving each other. We would go visit each other's homes, Max and gloved at the time, and very careful, and we would exchange seedlings. This is the garden during the pandemic. I started to grow collard greens. This is winter time in Pasadena. We had a recall of all lettuce, California lettuce, at the beginning of the pandemic, on top of everything else. So we started all growing lettuce. Of course, we always have citrus and lemon growing. And here is the Mondo Grass remove, which I turned into a squash bed. Finding metal, in our metalsmithing program, I found this kind of discard and turned it into a trellis. Here are pedestals that, again, from our metal shop that we use for our shows. They were throwing them out, and I said, oh, perfect, tomato cages. And so here we are during the pandemic, growing other kinds of vegetables, and then started to grow from our own vegetables. So here's celery, where you cut off the bottom and it starts drawing, and 3 days later you have celery growth. And now I have celery growing abundantly as a result of buying celery and then taking the stalk and replanting it. Sustainable ceramic practices, we must all start talking about it. How we're going to do it, I don't know, but if it can be profitable, climate change reversal is certainly popular. So what I would like to recommend is we consider lowering the temperature of our firings, adjusting our glazes, and moving to electric kilns. At Otis, we are all electric. We are all low fire. Our kilns automatically turn on at 7:01 p.m. when the electrical grid is quieter and the prices go down, and we are off before the electrical grid. We are finished by the time the electrical grid needs our electricity. Our firings are running about $7 a firing in comparison to what would have been $50 or $60 a firing with gas. Gas emissions are a problem with the kiln. Wood burning is also a problem, I'm sad to say. And of course, salt kilns send off chlorine gases. I am just about to pull the plug on all water in the ceramic studio at Otis. Less water, less cracking. I experimented and started last summer. For the entire summer, I only used 1 quart of water, reusing that water over and over again. Of course, I was only using white clay, so I used that water only for washing my hands or taking off the big clay excess, and then turned it into slip. Functional pottery must replace paper and plastic. We must, and this is an opportunity for all functional potters. Hillside stabilization, solar panels may lower our electric kiln costs. College programs in ceramics need to innovate. We need to work with industry to create opportunity to lower our zero and carbon to get to zero carbon emissions. Our glazes need to be non-toxic. We need to store water and electricity. We must reuse public spaces. And this is what I think is so fascinating. One of my former students was a avionic engineer at SpaceX, and he is now growing food in empty parking structures in San Francisco. And because he's a lighting expert for space, he's able to create light to grow hydroponically vegetables, and people are taking out subscriptions. So science will save us from COVID. Science will also save us from climate change. Let's retrain Americans. Let's create innovation and create new jobs that are innovative in this innovative need. And please read Bill Gates' book. I'm not smart enough to join Bill Gates, but I am smart enough to think about what he's thinking about. So artists and designers can visually translate science so more people can understand climate change. That is the bottom line. And we have all we need to get there by 2050 to get to zero carbon emissions. So if there are any questions, I don't know if there are any questions in the chat, or I would be happy to answer them. And I don't know if I can answer them because what I'm proposing takes innovation. It's going to take a lot of hard work, and it's going to take all of us thinking and working together. We cannot ask the poor of the world to live without electricity. We must generate electricity so that everyone can have electricity in their homes, in their workplaces. And so therefore we must do something. Sure.
Joni Oibenintende, hello Joni, is asking, I understand the need to conserve water, but isn't water necessary for throwing on the wheel and for recycling clay?
You know, I throw on the wheel a lot. I love to throw on the wheel, and I just kept using that same quart of water. I don't use much water though. I have to say, I throw with very little water just because, and I'm not very messy when I throw, to tell you the truth. I don't like being messy, and so when I show the students, I'll just show them my fingertips might be a little bit messy, and one side of the palm of my hand is a little messy.
So a little bit of slip, basically. By using the slip, you use less water.
Yeah. And I do use the slip a lot, you know, for hand building. So the throwing water will go to hand building eventually.
That's great. Susan Parrish says, thank you for the amazing presentation.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for attending tonight.
All right. And then I have a couple more questions. So Beryl, hi Beryl Perone Feller says, a huge proponent for art as advocacy. I wonder if you have answers to some big questions that I have been pondering for quite some time. How do you see your work, in parentheses, and art/craft at large, fit into the landscape of environmental advocacy? Alternatively, who is the work intended for? How do you get it to them, and how does it ideally spark action? And I'll be happy to repeat any part of
Oh,
that.
no, that's fine. I think that what will happen is that first and foremost, I think it's really important, at least when I'm thinking about it in my advocacy, and it is this talking, which my husband says I've made a whole career out of talking about these things, but also that people can live with the work that I'm making. So in other words, this piece that is in the background, this is actually in replacement of light fixtures in your front yard. So that, and my hope is to make it beautiful enough, and even though this is hauntingly tragic, that it is a coral reef that is an abstracted human causing all of these problems. I mean, it is our fault. It is our human catastrophe that we have created. Um, I think that one of the way to get this across is people will say, gee, that's really kind of nice. And then I'll say, well, it's a coral reef and it's been bleached. And, and so there, that's where the statement comes into play. And also putting the work in as many public places as possible. And I think airports was a really good place to begin, because what do you do in an airport? You run through the airport if you're late, but nobody is that late to airports given security now. And so you wander around wondering what to do, how many cups of coffee you're going to drink. Well, maybe you're going to look at exhibitions. And so exhibitions about climate change, as Craft in America has done, I think is useful. So getting the work out there, getting people to talk about it, and Americans are really interesting people. Once it happens, we do succeed. We do jump on certain wagons, and we do begin to think about this. And it's going to take time, and it's going to have to take persistence. The climate change course that I'm teaching, because I call myself the unnatural science teacher, we are reading Bill Gates's book in as many languages as possible. My students are from all over the world, and I don't care what language they read it in. Because I know they're going to go home, and they're going to go home more educated on the science behind climate change. So, as you know, I can hardly wait until I get to teach in fall.
That's great. Well, next we have a question for Bill Westheimer. Hey, Bill. He says, hi, do you know if synthetic chemicals are being developed to replace mined chemicals and minerals that are ingredients in clay and glazes?
This is a problem. You are absolutely right, Bill. And thank God for Ralph Becerra, who required us to take 3 years of glaze chemistry. And so many of the materials that we use are toxic. Now, California has to have one of the most radical ingredient list possible. And so our ceramic lab at Otis, of course, we're governed by whatever is, considered non-toxic. And more chemicals have been removed from our glaze lab, to tell you the truth. So what we have to do is really get kind of smart. And we have to work with the clay glaze companies as well. And boy, I think the commercial glazes are really very strong, but certain glazes and certain glaze companies are not even permitted to be sold in California. And where there is no sales and where there is no profit, you will trigger change. So I'm watching certain companies change their formulas so they can take care. I mean, the California market is significant. So I'm waiting for barium to disappear a little bit, or maybe only used under certain circumstances. I'd love to see some of these chemicals that are toxic encapsulated, just like we are trying to encapsulate the stains right now so that the reds and the yellows and the purples don't burn out, especially and the oranges. And, I think it's very possible, but it's going to take a lot of smart people working together. And we also have to work with the kiln companies. So stay tuned. Craft in America this summer is pulling in some kiln companies and a couple of us from Southern California to discuss how can we change our kilns, how can we change our glazes, and how we can protect our water supply.
Okay, thank you. Sunny Longbuns is asking, can you talk about your creative process? turning your concepts and activism into your art and specific pieces?
Boy, I don't, I think it's called, air in is air out. And I don't care for that, the concept of air in and air out. But what I do believe in is content in is content out. So I read a lot, and I always have read a lot. And I have a very clear discipline every day. The very first thing I do in the morning is I read, and the very last thing I do before I go to sleep is I read. And I'm reading journals, I'm reading books, I'm checking. I mean, the internet is so fabulous, and I just seem to intuit all this material, just like carrying around bleached coral chunks for a couple of years and looking at them and thinking, okay, how can I integrate this into my work? And it becomes part of what I do. And I do think that I'll probably spend the rest of my life thinking about climate change. This is a big one. It started in 1973. I can't say that I was completely dedicated that whole time. I wasn't, but it's interesting to book in one's life when you're a teenager and learning about greenhouse emissions, and then now moving today as I, go into the final chapters of my life, thinking about the very same issues. So content in is content out.
Do you think that because you're in California where the fires are like
Oh,
looming and the weather really makes a difference between the drought? I'm just thinking we live in a pretty lush place here in the East Coast where there's plenty of water and plenty of green and not a whole lot of fire. So I think there's a way where we can be more complacent because it's not a looming threat.
I would imagine so, because it is, I was just saying earlier, we were under 3 months of fire evacuation in my neighborhood, and it was debilitating smoke in the air. It was terrible. So, um, I am always reminded about how dry it is. And more importantly for California is the snowpack, because it is the snowpack that becomes our water source. And we are a fragile metropolis. We are a fragile environmental state. We are a fragile state.
It's interesting because this year we had so much more snow
Mm-hmm.
than past years in our region, northern New Jersey, north
Right.
Pennsylvania, and there are certain plants that just seem to be blooming and so much more prolifically, having had that water from the snow. It's quite noticeable, actually.
Well, climate changes also can be very severe. You might have more catastrophic storms, more hurricanes or typhoons in Asia. You might have heavier snowpack. You might have more severe climate than usual. And also, a lot of my students worked on the movie The Day After Tomorrow, doing the special effects, because we are in the movie industry
Mhm.
at Otis, and Otis does provide the movie industry with special effects specialists. Um, they worked on The Day After Tomorrow, and the students told me about it, and they said, the freezing of New York City is very possible given climate change, and the sinking of Miami is inevitable. And
Mhm.
look what we're doing. Look what we're doing today.
Yeah, that is something that the rising water table is a big problem. Uh, Joanne Vindici says, "Thank you, Joan. Such beautiful items that make a statement and functional items as well."
Oh, thank you, Joanne. Thank
Um,
you.
couple of things that Rachel posted. If you'd like to watch this presentation again, it's going to be available on our YouTube channel in another day or so, the Peters Valley YouTube channel, so you can watch it again and share it with friends. You can also, if you want to know more about Joan, go to her website, joantakayama-ogawa.com. And thank you so much for your presentation. Oh, there's another question. Hold on. Always
I just
happens.
put
Last,
my website in the chat also.
yes. Colleen Wash White is saying, thank you for your presentation and your artwork is beautiful. Do you see the irony in displaying exhibits on climate change at airports, a very large consumer of fossil fuels and greenhouse exhaust?
You know that I felt terrible. You're right. You're right. I think about that, and then I read Bill Gates's book, and he has this whole system because he has a private jet, and he's probably over consuming on many levels, and he admits it. But he is working on a better fossil fuel to power his private jet. So I felt a little better about it, and I would like to. Airplanes are, one cross-continental flight is a significant polluter and contributor to our emissions problem. So yes, but on the other hand, we first have to, we really do have to educate our public, and we also have to encourage the best and the brightest of our society to go into public service. And I am saying this over and over again when I speak to high schools and to colleges and to my own classes, that the best and the brightest have not been going into public service. And I think we saw the consequences of this over the past several years. So I would like to see our leadership coming from the best and the brightest of America.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you so very much. Let's see. Joni Oibenintende is asking, are Japanese potters becoming more environmentally concerned with their large fuel burning kilns? Your relatives in Tokonami do a lot of industrial ceramics, or used to. How are they firing?
No, no, they're using anagama kilns. They're using very big gas kilns. I think that as we get the climate accord going in Japan, well, one thing about the Japanese, if you think about it, they are usually their reliance on fossil fuels at 100% have to be imported. And the Japanese will be the first at the bargaining table with OPEC nations. And so as the Japanese move to and start to think about this, they will probably be one of the first at the bargaining table of taking certain ideas and creating better ways. And that's of doing a lot of things, because they too are suffering from very big environmental issues. Now, Bill Gates is recommending safe nuclear power as well. And if the Japanese can come up with better and join this idea of nuclear power, but I think that would be a hard sell given that it is one nation that has had the nuclear bomb, and now they have this incredible problem in Fukushima with of severe contamination. So I don't know if the Japanese will go towards nuclear energy. But that was a big problem. They should never have put those receptacles on the ocean side. That was called out by LA Times writer Leslie Helm about 30 years ago. It was on the front page of the LA Times. And why in the world was Fukushima, those tanks on the ocean side? They could have been put on the other side. And as the tsunami waves hit those tanks, of course, triggered a very, very bad thing.
Mm.
Yeah, that was bad design, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
And when I talked to Leslie, he was out of his mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope, a couple more messages. Let's see. Thank you so much, Joan. And thank you for your wonderful and insightful talk and ideas. And thank you for sharing all of your inspiration and your activism. And also for making it very personal and really possible. You can start with some spackle buckets in your yard to grow your food. Doesn't have to be that complicated. So
it can be very easy. I have students growing food on the driveway even. So it can be done. And of course, Los Angeles, we are really suffering with COVID and food insecurity. So this was very timely to get this idea out. Let's first feed ourselves. And then we started with stay-at-home clay kits 8 donors stepped up and provided over 100 students with free stay-at-home clay kits. So we were able to teach ceramics online and have with safe distancing. We have work delivered and fired at Otis and then returned. We have a whole system of technology that allows students to carefully drop off their work and then pick it up when it's fired. So there's all kinds of ways to do things. And it was actually two Silicon Valley tech giants who started this idea. I mean, I started the idea and said, please help me. And they stepped up to provide. Now I think I have 200 students will receive stay-at-home clay kits. So who knew? Who knew that ceramics would expand so quickly during a pandemic?
Well, it takes a village.
It sure does. And and I think we can do this though. And an educated public and very smart people working on climate change and if it's and make it very profitable for people. If it's
Yes.
profitable, it'll work. Capitalism does work. Greed does work if we can just move that towards environmentally sound practices to save the planet.
Yes, and I will also move it to save the artists. We have our virtual craft fair on May 1st and 2nd, so I'm going to do a shameless plug for our virtual craft fair where we have 85 artists presenting, and you can sign up through our website on Hop-In Events, and it's a lot of fun because artists will be in their booths and you can talk to them and look at their work. It's really a neat way. We did it in October. We were innovating, and I think this particular period has been challenging and also has opened up a lot of possibility and challenged our innovations. So check out
Wow,
the
we're
website.
doing Hop-In 2 for the first time for product design for our senior show. I really would like to see your Hop-In event. Do you have that recorded so we could see how it
Um,
went for you all?
well, I think what you can do, it's right in our chat is the link. And
Okay.
Brienne Rosner, our craft show director, has all sorts of information so we can connect you with her. But yes, if you
I'm
just go
reading
to
it right now.
hopin.com, Peter
Yeah.
Valley Spring 2021. And oh, hi, Glenn Gilmore. Thanks so much for sharing your art and thoughts this evening. Wonderful, he says. And
Oh,
Glenn,
thank you.
a blacksmith in Montana, and one of our instructors. So anyway, so glad that you were all able to join us tonight. And Joan, let's be in touch so we can share that Hop-In information with you. And to everyone else, come to our website, petersvalley.org, look up our craft fair and join us on May 1st and 2nd. It's a really neat experience, and you can visit with friends and bump into people in the booths. So have a
I'll
wonderful
be
evening.
there. I'll be
Thank
there.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Joan.
you. Thank you
Thank
very much.
you, everyone.
Good evening.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We would like to thank our sponsors for making programs like this possible. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to receive more like it in the future.